Well, good evening, members, gentlemen in the public gallery and officers. Welcome to this Planning Committee meeting of the 18th of August 2021. As always, a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security door to my right. It's the one on your left, or whatever way you look at it. Please do not use the lifts. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orban. Thank you. Or Councillor Orban. Please do not use the lift, because I see that the one isn't working. Assemble in Hawley Square until officers come over or whatever and speak to you, and we can return to this chamber. Does anybody intend filming? No? Okay, thank you. Restriction of mobile phones. Would everybody present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. Members requesting to speak under Council Procedure 20.1. I can't see any other members who aren't on committee. James, I don't think. Thank you very much. Public speaking. The following applications have been reserved for public speaking, but please members note that agenda item 4B, Zengel Farm. I hope I've said it right there. Farmhouse, Hayne Road, Ramsgate. Moving on to our agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Thank you, we don't have any there. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest from members. No. Agenda item 3, the minutes of the Planning Committee on the 21st of July 2021. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 21st of July be approved and signed by the Chair? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Coleman-Cook, a second, please. Councillor Orban. Do members agree? Agree, Chair. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is the schedule of planning applications and public speaking. Any site visits, which I think we could be looking forward to at some stage, will be taking place on Friday the 3rd of September. Agenda item 4B, planning application R02, Zengel Farmhouse. I'm sure I'll be picked up on that, but Hayne Road, Ramsgate. Speaking in favour of the application is Mr. Hare. Mr. Hare, you have 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members and officers. The officer's report accepts that the farmhouse is vacant, extensively fire damaged, and the site is largely overgrown. My client would therefore like to think members will agree that this proposal will represent a significant improvement to the visual amenities and appearance of the area through the tidying up of the current eyesore and its replacement with a well-designed, contemporary residential scheme reflecting the character of a farmyard courtyard, which is deemed acceptable by officers. Indeed, the report confirms the site now lies within the urban area. Being of low density, the scale of development would not appear incongruous. It would sit comfortably within the context of the buildings opposite. It would not appear out of keeping with the form and pattern of development in the area, and the existing and proposed planting will largely shelter the development from longer views, which can be maintained in accordance with a long-term management plan. Whilst the report mentions previous removal of trees, this was carried out following inspection by a tree surgeon, whereby hazardous trees with visible signs of rot at the base and leaning over the highway had to be removed. Also, many were self-seeded sycamores, growing at angles with split trunks, making them unstable, and with intertwined root systems affecting the stability of others. All other trees have been retained, especially to the perimeters away from the road, along with the strong mature single trunk trees to the centre of the plot, which have been incorporated into the proposed layout. Further visual benefits will occur from the fact that the site features prominently on the approach into Thanet from two major arterial roads, and that the setting of the listed buildings opposite will be enhanced, with the officer's report confirming that the development would not result in harm to the setting or historic features of the listed buildings at Osengall Grange. The report also indicates that ecology enhancement and archaeological matters can be dealt with by condition. There would be no adverse impact on residential amenities of existing occupiers, and the development is acceptable in terms of space standards and provision of amenity space. As acknowledged by officers, the title balance is in favour of granting consent now applies, but which was not considered to be the case by the inspector at the time of the previous appeal. Members therefore now have the opportunity to consider afresh whether the harm alleged, in terms of a perception of harm to pedestrian safety, which will not arise as residents will not attempt to walk along Hayne Road, but will have the opportunity to use the adjoining bridleway or the alleged unsustainable location, despite its proximity to Ramsgate and Manston, both of which are within easy cycling distance. Significantly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits of clearing the present eyesore and creating an attractive courtyard development, which will contribute to the supply of housing. Finally, the application had no public objections, and I think it is clear local residents want something to happen here, especially given the support seen in the comments section of the recent Isle of Thanet News Facebook post. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hare. And I'll ask the planning officer, which is Annabelle Hemmings, to... Yes, could you please turn your mic off, if you would, push the button.
Sorry.
Thank you. Our planning officer will give the report. Annabelle.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application site outlined in red. This is the application site, an aerial view of it within its context. So it's this square here in the middle of the slide. Opposite the site is Osengall Grange, which is a listed manor house with a listed barn. To give it some context, we have Manston Road running across the slide in this sort of area. We have the Manston Tesco's here, and we have Hayne Road, which separates the application site from Osengall Grange. So zooming in on that aerial, this is the application site, and as has been talked about, this is quite an old picture of the site. Were a number of trees along the site, including along the boundary of Hayne Road and along all the boundaries of the site. Some of those trees have now been cleared. So just looking at some photographs of the site, this is the fire damaged dwelling that sits on the site that has been mentioned. Again, this is another view of the site. This is one of the trees that remain on the site, and you can see some trees to the rear of the site here, and you can see some evidence of fly tipping that is on the site. Again, this is another view of the site, and we're looking towards the western boundary here. These trees sit along the western boundary, and you can see a car along Hayne Road, so you can see some of those trees that did run along the frontages of the site at Hayne Road have been removed. The site here is on the left-hand side of the photograph, so you can see some trees still remain around the boundaries, and this is looking with the site on the right-hand side, so you can see some trees remaining, the fire damaged building, and some trees to the rear of the site and along the edges here. So that gives it the context of some trees still being retained to the boundaries of the site at the moment. So this is the existing site plan, as we've just seen. So you have the access road here, the fire damaged building here. This is the proposed site plan, and as has been mentioned, it will be a sort of courtyard, farmyard style development with the 6 houses running round a central sort of area here with some landscaping and maintaining and using the existing access. This is a proposed ground floor, so of all units, and you will see that they are served by private amenity spaces. They have parking. There is some visitor parking within the site. This is the first floor plan. It might be slightly difficult to see, but essentially there are 2 3-bed dwellings and 4 4-bed units within the site. I'll just have a quick look at some of the sections within the site to give you some idea of the design of the buildings. So section A at the top is looking through the middle of the site and looking towards the rear, so that's where the 4 houses that you saw would be sitting. Section B below is what you'd see, it's the section closest to Hayne Road, and you can see the site access here in this area. Site section C is looking across the site, going from Hayne Road to the countryside on the left-hand side, so west-hand side of the site. And section DD below is looking at the eastern side, so the right-hand side if you were looking at the site from Hayne Road. Essentially you can see here that the proposed dwellings are quite traditional in design. They do not seek to mirror or replicate any particular form of development, but they use traditional materials, have pitched roofs and are 2 stories in height, and they are considered to be acceptable in terms of design. This is a landscaping plan, and as has been mentioned, there are a number of trees that will be added to the site, and these are the ones shown in yellow, the yellow circles here. There will also be, the brown circles you see here are the existing trees that have been retained, and there will be a variation of different planting and things, that private amenity areas will be garden areas and planted, obviously to the desire of the applicants, the future occupiers of those units. There is an open area of landscaping proposed here which is shown to be a wildflower meadow, and there is a part of garden wall here, but the rest of the boundary treatment is said to be post and rail fencing to give it a more rural feel and character. So yeah, as has been mentioned, the proposals reuse the existing access to proposed dwellings. No objections raised to this by KCC Highways, and this plan shows the visibility displays that can be achieved, and they are considered adequate and acceptable, and there's been no objection raised by KCC about the number of traffic movements that would be generated by the development. Excuse me. Members would have seen in the report there is a link, or a link being made with this site and the surrounding Manston Green development that's been approved, at least in part, around the site. So I'll hand over to Mr Livingstone Ian to give a brief update in relation to that.
Hi members, so this is the illustrative layout that was approved for the outline application for Manston Green. Members will remember we discussed Manston Green in terms of some of the proposed changes to the planning contributions that were being made with regards to a housing infrastructure fund bid a year and a half ago or so. The context of the application site really does link to the Manston Green development. So it was approved outline consent in July 2016 for 785 houses. You'll see the application site is basically right in the centre of this, and this application was approved before the local plan was adopted. The local plan being adopted included the allocation of this site, which moved the urban confines to the west, which basically then led to the inclusion of Manston Green within the urban confines. So the proposed development for Manston Green is linked to 3 main phases. The first phase of development is the one in light green, which we're going to look at in a little bit of detail in a second. That has proposed about 220 houses. The blue phase is phase 2, which is about 280 odd houses, and then phase 3 to the west of the existing Hayne Road in beige and orange is the rest of the houses up to the 785. The link road that you will have seen on the left hand side is proposed to go, would be required to be provided before phase 3 any units on phase 3 are occupied, and that in turn would lead to the downgrading of Hayne Road, so all the traffic would run around the outside of the site. So that's what was sort of secured through the outline. We've also got the original parameter plan for the development to give an idea of where all the various linkages for both vehicles and pedestrians would come from. This plan indicates that phase 3 on the west of the site and on the left hand side of the image that you can see would have a sort of pedestrian route along the Hayne Road, linking to the houses that would be going forward in phase 3. But you will also see running along the very south, directly adjacent to this site, a link from the new Hayne Road, a pedestrian link all the way through along an existing bridleway route that would then wrap around the edge of the Osendale Grange site and then connect back in, and this part is phase 1 of the development at Manston Green. So the phase 1 application was submitted just about almost 3 years ago. It was approved in October 2019. So with the original outline application, it was granted permission for all the reserve matters applications to be submitted within 5 years of that original outline. So what that gave was up until July this year for all 3 phases to be submitted to the council. First phase came in, as I say, a few years ago. It was approved in October 2019, and they've got 2 years to implement that reserve matters for that phase. So that means that phase has to be implemented by October this year to be extant, to be able to be built out. And the applicant has submitted a number of details to discharge the pre-commencement conditions. They've either been already discharged or they're with the council now, with the clear intention that they are going to implement that development at phase 1 so that permission will then be extant. We have received both applications for phases 2 and 3. They came in before the July deadline this year, and they will be, and one of them is already valid, and it was on the weekly list this week, I believe. It's for phase 2, with phase 3 still invalid, but it's within the time frame so that we will be considering that development. So in terms of this phase that you can see it includes, sorry, let's get my mouse pointer up there. So you'll see it includes an emergency vehicular access onto the Hayne Road, which is not for normal use of vehicles. The design and access statement on the reserve matters makes it clear that will only be provided with the pedestrian link when the road has been downgraded, because at the moment Hayne Road is still the primary route in, from Lord of the Manor to Westwood Cross. But you can see where the arrow is that shows the emergency access route with a path that be provided. So as I mentioned, this phase has 220 dwellings. In the council's annual monitoring report, which looks at projections of when housing sites that have already got consent are going to come forward using communication provided by the agents, it indicates that the first phase of development in the financial year 2022 to 2023, so starting next April, it's expected that 20 units on this phase would be provided in that year period. And as of today, we do not have confirmation that there is a confirmed house builder for this phase of development. It is expected, as I say, that the land agent that's clearing all the conditions will implement this consent. They will get on site, they will dig the trenches in accordance with the permission to make the consent be extant and then be able to be implemented. But as far as we are aware, there is no confirmed house builder yet for phase 1. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, we need to go back.
Fine, Annabelle.
Yeah, thank you. Just an update to continue talking about the highway issues that have been mentioned. Hayne Road is obviously a busy road, I'm sure most members know it. It's a 60-mile speed limit and mostly unlit, and there are no footpaths on either side of the road along the frontage of this particular application site or for several metres either way of it. The application would propose a footpath along the very frontage of the site so along just at the actual front of the application site, but it can go no further because the rest of the land is not within its ownership. So concerns are raised by officers and KCC Highways about the safety of future occupiers of the site who would be likely to walk in the carriageway of Hayne Road to get to bus stops or services and amenities. And as I said, KCC have objected to the application, which is quite rare, but they are saying and state that the site would not provide safe access for pedestrians, cyclists, and recommend refusal on that basis. The applicants, as we have already said and set out in the report, link the application with the Manston Green development, and that this would provide the missing pedestrian links and make the development safe for pedestrians and cyclists in the future, together with the downgrading of Hayne Road itself. As has been set out in the report and has been mentioned, this application, essentially the same application, has come before us before for the 6 dwellings and did go to appeal and was dismissed at appeal. In assessing the appeal, the inspector considered the sustainability of the site in relation to its location and highway safety was the principal issue, and he concluded that Phase 1 of the Manston Green development, when complete, would provide safe pedestrian cycle access for the occupants of the site, albeit they would have to cross Hayne Road to get to the link to the south of the site. But he did raise concerns that there was no indication of when work would begin on that phase, let alone when it would be completed, and that there was no timescale for the other phases of the Manston Green development coming forward, and therefore also the associated downgrading of Hayne Road. He went on to dismiss the appeal on the basis that the development would not be sustainable in environmental terms, due to occupiers having to rely on private vehicles, and also issues of highway safety. Since that time, and as has been explained by Ian, the Reserve Matters Phase 1 of Manston Green has been submitted and approved, and works must commence before October 2021. But the completion date for this phase is not within the control of the council or the applicant for this current application we're looking at tonight. At this present time, there is no certainty that the footpaths for Manston Green development will come forward, or indeed that all phases of the development will come forward. Even if this were to be the case, it is considered by officers that this small development is likely to come forward prior to the Manston Green improvements being in place and the downgrading of Hayne Road, given the small scale of its development of only 6 houses. So officers are therefore recommending refusal on the basis of highway safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and again the site being unsustainable due to reliance for future occupiers having to rely on private vehicles to access amenities and facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annabel. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Members. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Interesting. Personally, I've been in the old house many years ago when Mr. Pallow used to own it, and back then. Wait. I'll try that one. And back in those days, Chair, there were. I know. Stereo. It's bad enough. It's bad enough in mono, let alone stereo. Of course, back in those days, Chair, there wasn't the amount of traffic that there is now. That does worry me, the issue of the traffic along there and anybody walking along there. I certainly wouldn't walk along there. And I know that anybody else here would. You can't tell that they will never want to walk along there. Things happen and things will need to be, people will need to walk at some time or other. The fact that the site is to want of a better phrase, an eyesore, because people are fly tipping on it, that's not a reason for us to grant planning consent. We've got to look at it, as it's been said, at the sustainability of it, We can't, as been said as well, we don't know when the Manston Green development will take place. And I agree with the officer's report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. I didn't really want to say that you were wrestling with two microphones. Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in agreement. I hate to say it with Mr. Alban. I mean, I think that it's where it is. We all know the Hayne Road. It's a okay. A lot of cars don't go more than 30 because it's blocked up. But I mean, of an evening, it does fly around. But I think if they're going to build this, it should be when phase 3 is done and the road is declassified. And also, I think they need to have. What did you say as you look at the picture where that road's going through? Is that a bridleway or is that a footpath? That red on the left as you look at the buildings. So that line that's coming through, is that footpath? Bridleway. But realistically, you know, if it ever gets planning, I mean, I think that they should have access to that so that they can walk into the estates and go that way, because, you know, there's nowhere for them to go, even as a downgraded road. I mean, they just can't walk anywhere. So I think they've got to have a way of getting out onto a pedestrian area.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that's been said. I know there are remote places where cars are necessary and everything else, but as Councillor Alban said, traffic has changed beyond recognition. This is a busy road, and I just don't think that personal safety can be what's the word? Sorry.
Ignored.
Yeah, okay, ignored will do. Thank you. It's a pity because I think this is an attractive development, and I think it will be good if Manston Green goes ahead, but I think it has to be one for the future, and not until then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Rozeski.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with my other councillors on this. Looking at it, I don't think I could live with myself passing this in this present condition. If there was to be an accident on that road, then I could never live with myself afterwards. Once the phase 1 is complete and the road is downgraded and they've got the footpath going across and possibly even a crossing there, then that would be the time that we would go for that kind of development. The development itself, looking at it, looked great, but not with that road in the condition it is now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted some clarification for the Grange. Is that a residential building or what is that? And so how do they? You know, they don't have a footpath either.
Yes, indeed. Those two properties, including, I suppose, the property that's now derelict. Indeed, they didn't have pedestrian access, but as I think Councillor Alban said, obviously when they were built, that road wasn't in any way the primacy that it has now in terms of vehicular movements. So whenever it occurred, you know, they were all pre the planning system, in fact.
Councillor Patmore.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, how long will it be before they build the new Hayne Road? Because you were going to get a bus, if I remember rightly, a bus was going to come down the old Hayne Road through the centre of the development, and it was for buses only, no cars from there to there sort of thing.
So as mentioned, we've got specific timescales in terms of when each phase needs to start. One thing I didn't, I suppose, explain, which is relevant for members, is for phases 2 and 3, and 3 being the particularly important one because it will provide the new road and the link through. That would have to be implemented again within 2 years of when the reserve mass has been granted. And obviously we've just got the application in, we haven't consulted on it yet, and obviously then we'll have to assess it, go through public consultation, and then potentially they would be able to start it within those 2 years after granting. But obviously that doesn't necessarily mean that then, you know, say within 4 years, we've got to the point where the road is downgraded at that point, because obviously the development is likely to be built out phase 1, then 2, then 3, with the projections in the local plan, annual monitoring report basically outlines it from 2022 onwards and goes outside the plan period as well to 2031. So it is, it's phased to occur effectively over the next 10 years or so.
So shouldn't the new road be built first? And then there's no traffic coming that way that needs to bring things onto the development site.
So the road, it has to be provided before any dwellings on phase 3, so to the west of the New Hayne Road, are provided. So phases 1 and 2, everything to the east of the Hayne Road, can be built out using the existing Hayne Road, but anything of the just over 300 units, I think it is, if anything's occupied on the other side, the road has to be provided with that. So the road doesn't come through first as part of the Manston Green development; it comes through partially, part of the way through.
Thank you, Ian. Microphone, Pat. Microphone. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification question about the other development that you've talked about, which are to be developed in 3 phases, 1, 2, 3. Phase 1, they're going to dig the footings, so just to show, well, we've made a start, but there isn't a builder at the moment to take that on. And then I'm assuming that obviously phase 2, which has just been issued, the plan application has just been issued for consultation, whether that's approved or not, that won't start until after phase 1's finished, and then which hasn't started yet, and we haven't got a builder for, and then phase 3, I assume, won't start either until phase 2 has started and been completed. So we've got a whole chain of development which is stuck at the first hurdle at the moment, by the sound of it, because we haven't got anyone to actually build it. And it does sort of link in with this application, because if this application was before us and phase 1 had been started and was looking like it was going to be completed, this would maybe be being viewed much more favourably than it is now. But as it is, this can't really be viewed favourably until phase 1 has at least been started, and we don't know, apart from footings being dug, we don't know when that's going to be anywhere near completion.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Totally understand where you're coming from now. Hand back to Mr. Livingston.
Thanks. Yeah, that's correct. The one thing I'd say is that we are aware that there are various interested parties in phase 1 and phase 2. Obviously, we're not party to all of the discussions between the land agent who's got the option on the development and signing contracts with house builders. All that we have confirmed is that, as you say, it's going to be implemented. They're doing everything they can to get it to be able to implement it, to keep it alive as a consent. But yes, we don't have a completion date as yet. Obviously, it may be that things move at a pace if things are sorted out with a house builder in October, but obviously still feel that even with that happening, we're not going to get to the point where phase 1 has been totally implemented before theoretically this development has been completed for just 6 houses rather than 220, and the roundabout also being part of that scheme as well. The roundabout has to be completed as well before any of the phase 1 development is occupied. So there are lots of things that have to happen before the various links are put in place.
Thank you. Councillor Wing, did I see your... thank you. I thought I saw you wave at me there for a moment. No, okay, thank you. Any other speakers, members? I'm sorry, you can't come back. I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. Members, I think we've had a fair debate there and very interesting as well. So at this point I'm going to move that to the officer's recommendation is adopted, and which you are aware of is this stage to refuse. Can I have a show of hands here, please, for those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Please show. Those against? Abstentions? The officer recommendation has been adopted. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Hare. Thank you. I'm sorry, you'll have to contact Mr. Livingston or Annabelle after the meeting or in office hours. Thank you, members. That concludes public speaking. For this meeting, I will call upon the clerk to read out the remaining planning applications. As usual, if any member wishes to reserve one of those applications, will they please give a call out and we will make a note of it. James.
Thank you, Chair. So we have two remaining items, which is 25A Edith Road in Ramsgate and the land adjacent to 2 Shah Place in Ramsgate.
I could say something, but I'm not going to. No, nothing at all, Councillor Orban. Okay, members, I didn't see any hands or words come up, so can I have a proposer to move that the application that had not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer's recommendation? Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Coleman Cook. Yes, a proposer. First, I don't mind proposing, but Councillor Rosewski. Thank you, Councillor Rosewski. We have a seconder. Do members agree? Thank you. For those members of the public, I know we don't have any, but I will ask the clerk to read out the applications that have just been determined.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So that was 25A Edith Road, Ramsgate, and the second one, land adjacent to 2 Shah Place in Ramsgate.
Thank you, James. Well, that's it. Thank you very much, members.
Chairman, can I just make a comment, Chair?
Please.
When the clerk reads out those, say like in this case those 2 applications, instead of just reading out the address, can for the members of the public who are looking online or on what's name, can say 25 Edith Road is approved and 2 Shah Place for deferral, because it wasn't said. So I just think that's important that needs to be said, Chair, for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Orban. I think you've said it. I believe we're still online, but thank you for that, and that's a good point for future meetings. Thank you. Members, thank you very much for your time this evening. Till next